306,000 jobs just very quietly disappeared from the U.S. economy without so much as a whisper from any of the politicians in Washington or anybody in the mainstream financial press. What's up, guys? I'm nobody special, and going all the way back to last year, I've been warning over and over again that this strong jobs market that we hear so much about was fake, that the actual data being reported doesn't support this narrative that employment is so high. Sure, we've got a very low unemployment rate, and the headline numbers about jobs added every month have been just fantastic. But what's not getting covered is the data within a lot of these reports that shows a lot of weakness in the jobs market. And even though the press just loves to celebrate these big headline numbers as soon as they're reported, and all the politicians take a victory lap and pat themselves on the back, yay me, when those numbers later get revised, there's never any fanfare. Nobody ever says, oops, my bad. And that's been happening every month this year, and we just got another big revision. 306,000 of the jobs that were previously touted as proof of my economic plan working, well, those jobs just went away. Nobody's saying, well, I guess my economic plan isn't working after all. And here is the report in question that got zero attention in the mainstream press. And I got to send a shout out to my Patreon supporters. I had a member of my Patreon group sent me this one yesterday, and we talked about it on our weekly Zoom call. This is the preliminary benchmark revisions to the National Current Employment Statistics. This happens every year, and around August, they come out with the initial revisions to the jobs numbers. And right here, just above my head, you see that? Total non-farm minus 306,000 jobs. Now, this covers the period of March of 2022 all the way through March of 2023. So we're talking more than 25,000 jobs a month on average were just slashed from the monthly jobs reports going back for the last year. You'd think somebody in Washington would talk about this, or somebody in the press might point this out, but you would be mistaken. And I just want to take you through a couple of the sectors here. Some sectors saw revisions upward, like, for example, we've got construction here. That saw upward revisions of 30,000. That's strength in U.S. home builders because we don't have enough housing supply. That's one of the reasons why home prices haven't fallen. But we've got a lot of negative numbers here. Manufacturing, minus 43,000 jobs. We've been talking about weakness in the manufacturing sector on this channel for months now. All the monthly PMIs have been showing that hiring was slowing and that new orders were slowing, and yet the jobs number hasn't reflected that, only to be revised later on. But look at this one here. Transportation and warehousing lost 146,000 jobs. Now, that's a big one right there because we've been talking a lot about how freight costs are down, about how things just aren't moving. We had a lot of coverage of the bankruptcy of Yellow Trucking. That's a big story where 30,000 people lost their job. Things just aren't moving in the economy. We see that here in the States. We're seeing that overseas in China, where the China reopening story has been a dud. Really, the whole global economy is shrinking, as evidenced by data in the US, Japan, Europe, and China. And you see that here in this report, revised downward by 146,000 jobs for trade, transportation, and warehousing. Now, if the people who move the stuff are not doing very well, then how do you think the people who make the stuff are doing? Or how do you think the people who sell this stuff are doing? We had a small gain in utilities, 39,000 jobs lost in information, 47,000 jobs gained in financial activities. That's kind of a surprise considering the bank failures that we've seen. 116,000 lost in professional and business services. That's white-collar workers getting laid off. One thing we've seen in the recent jobs numbers and a lot of this economic data is that this is definitely a white-collar recession that we're heading for. You blue-collar guys might be all right out there, but you cubicle dwellers of the world, pay attention here, guys. That college degree is not going to protect you from the reckoning that's coming for the global economy. Other areas seeing losses, we had private education and health services down 85,000, leisure and hospitality down 46,000. Now, that's important because a lot of the job gains that we've seen recently have been in the leisure and hospitality sector. Well, losing 46,000 jobs across the last year from those numbers shows maybe it wasn't as strong as previously advertised. We also saw losses in other services, whatever that means. And of course, no matter what happens, the government just always has money to burn. 52,000 jobs gained in government. Yay, government. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Travis here over at Real Estate Mindset was kind enough to have me over on his channel where I talked all about how I think the strong jobs market narrative is really fake and that the economic data doesn't support that. And there was a mountain of data in that presentation. If you want to check that out, I'm going to put a link in the description down below. Also, while you're there, subscribe to Travis's channel and be sure and tell him that nobody sent you. And one of the things I talked about in that report over at Real Estate Mindset was how the jobs numbers keep getting revised month after month this year. Now, this chart originally came from Zero Hedge. All these green bars you're looking at is the originally reported jobs numbers. And then the red bar is when they go back months later and they revise it downward. And you can see every single month so far this year, the jobs numbers initially reported have been revised downward later on. And if you add up all of these downward revisions month after month, that's 245,000 jobs that were initially reported that weren't actually created. Well, this 306,000 jobs that just got reported yesterday, that's on top of these 245,000 that have already been overstated. So the government has overstated the jobs gained in the economy by over 500,000 recently. This jobs market is not anywhere near as strong as they're telling us. But it gets even worse. Besides the downward revisions, 306,000 jobs that were just lost yesterday in that initial benchmark revision, and besides the 245,000 jobs that have been revised lower month after month this year, we've also got these numbers here. Now, this is from table A9 in the most recent jobs report that we got for the month of July. And if you scroll way down in the report, you get these numbers here, full or part-time status. And this is where the reality of the jobs market really starts to reveal itself. Now, these two numbers here, this number right here and this number right here, these are the full-time workers in the economy for the month of June, 134.8 million. These numbers are in thousands. And then for July, 134.27 million. So even though the headlines told us the U.S. economy adds 187,000 jobs for the month of July, which looked like a pretty good number, we actually lost 585,000 full-time positions. More than 500,000 people who used to work full-time not doing it anymore. That doesn't really seem like a very strong jobs market, does it? Now, the reason you didn't hear about that is because of this number right here, part-time workers. Now, in the month of June, we had 26.181 million part-time workers. And then in the month of July, that number jumped up to 27.153 million. So we saw a gain of 972,000 part-time workers. So for the month of July, while they're telling us the economy added 187,000 jobs, what they weren't telling you was that almost 600,000 people lost full-time work and had to go work part-time somewhere else in order to offset that. That's not something that happens in a strong labor market. That's people taking whatever work they can get out of desperation, not economic prosperity. But it gets even worse. Again, in this same table here, let's check out multiple job holders and look at this total multiple job holders. In the month of June, there was 7.995 million multiple job holders, but in the month of July, there was 8.113 million multiple job holders. That's 118,000 people who had to go out and get a second job in the month of July. That's almost all of the jobs gained in the economy was people who lost full-time jobs and had to get a part-time job, or people who had to get a second job to make ends meet. Again, these are not things that happen in strong labor markets. If this was a strong labor market, those people would just demand a higher wage and they would get it and they wouldn't have to go do this. But these people are being forced to go back into the job market, get a second job because the cost of inflation has eaten away at their standard of living, and the only way to stay in their house or to maintain their current standard of living is to work two jobs. Now, every time you see this, 118,000 more people having to get a second job, that's 118,000 dads that aren't catching Little League games, or 118,000 moms that aren't there for the kids' dance recital or for whatever reason. That's people's lives getting more and more miserable because of what central banks and the government have done with the cost of living, what they've done through their inflation and their money printing. And while this is going on, they're congratulating themselves on doing such a good job touting this strong labor market where people are losing full-time jobs, and people are gaining part-time jobs or working second jobs, and they're hiding it in the math, coming back after the fact and revising these numbers lower, and the press, for whatever reason, does not hold these people accountable. There's nobody in the press that are looking at these numbers. There's nobody on Fox Business or CNBC or Bloomberg or Wall Street Journal that's talking about the revisions downward or the fact that these are all part-time or second jobs being gained in the economy. They're all jumping on this strong labor market bandwagon, but that narrative is fake. We do not have a strong jobs market. So if you're sitting there looking at these headlines and you're scratching your head saying, where is all this economic prosperity? If the jobs market is so high, if my economic plan is working, if everything is so good, how come the bills are stacking up at my house? How come I'm having such a hard time making ends meet? How come I keep hearing about my friends having to get a second job to make ends meet? It's not just you. Everybody is feeling that. The press and the government are lying about it, and the data shows it. You just have to look past the headlines. You've got to open up these reports. You got to look at these quiet, after-the-fact revisions that come out to no fanfare. It's also why you have to click that like button and subscribe to my channel so more people get this message that it's not just you. That's not rain dripping down your back. Things are not as good as they're telling you. And no matter how pretty a picture they spin or what rosy words they use in their headlines, they can't hide the data. The fact is, the whole global economy is slowing. Till next time, live small and dream big.